Hi guys, I want to welcome you to the Metabolic Health Docs YouTube channel. I am incredibly happy to, be in front of you guys. And one of the things I wanted to do with this video, first of all, I have a wonderful guest. That's Nina Teicholz with me. Many of you know her because she's the author of the Big Fat Surprise and founder of Nutrition Coalition. And she's out here doing the hard work of educating us about nutrition from a journalist perspective. Really appreciate that. She also recently got a PhD, so I'm really impressed with the idea of adding to the education, and we want to keep doing that so we can grow as humans. She writes for Substack, and recently she wrote an article about the Olympics organizers who recommended a vegan diet for the athletes. And sometimes we have to pause and ask ourselves, who should be giving nutrition advice? And I think that's really important. And so if you have a thought about, man, I get all this advice and half the time I don't know where it's coming from, and it leaves me confused. And I think some of that confusion is because you're not getting it from the right people. So I think I'm going to allow Nina to kind of share what she shared with that article. And then at the end, I'll share a few resources that I think you will find useful as you are journeying towards metabolic health. So Nina, thank you for being here. And what did you write in that article, and what were you trying to share?
Well, let me start with the diet part. So just to be clear, the Olympic Committee did not recommend a vegan diet, but the committee decided in order to cut the carbon output of the Olympics this go around, they were going to reduce the amount of animal foods that they offered on the supposition that those are worse for the environment. And so all across all of the cafeterias, they had 60% plant-based foods. And this is for the public as well. And in the Olympic Village cafeteria for the athletes, they had 30% of the foods were plant-based. This was this was an outrage to the athletes who, I think it's a basic biological premise that muscle, just for maintenance and growth, but say nothing of what's needed for peak, prime athletic performance, needs high quality proteins. And those high quality proteins, it's been well known for a long time that those come from animal based sources. And so meat, fish, eggs, such that in the 1924 Olympics, which was the first time they had a common dining hall, they mainly had meat and eggs and cheese, and dairy were the main offerings in that cafeteria. The current Olympic Committee had, the food was insufficient. The athletes said it was too vegan. They had, salmon Wellington instead of beef Wellington. They had vegetarian hot dogs. There was a little bit of a crisis, and they had to, in a kind of an emergency way, bring in 700 kilos of eggs and a ton of meat. And then the British Olympic Association was so concerned that they flew in two chefs and opened up their own athletic dining hall cafeteria for their athletes who had to be bussed over there to eat. So this, I think the basic issue here was an idea, like a value that, in this case, fighting climate change, was prioritized over basic human biology. Basic biology was just denied, not even considered. This is
Hmm.
happening all across food policy everywhere now, where human nutrition, what humans need basically to survive, is not even being considered. So this issue at the Olympics, I drew the parallel with, it's my job as a journalist to kind of draw parallels between what's happening in different parts of society, or this just interests me,
Hmm.
with the women's boxing competition. So it's a little controversial, but there were two individuals competing in that who the International Boxing Association tested their sex chromosomes twice. They said these are not XX chromosome individuals, implying that they were
Hmm.
most likely XY. And the IOC, the International Olympic Committee, said, we're not interested in sex chromosomes to determine sex. We are, they don't have criteria. They said, like, we don't know how to do it, but we're not even considering the sex chromosomes.
Mm.
So, I mean, I got very deep into this, and it's like it's complicated, but these two individuals won their respective weight categories and got the gold medals.
Mm-hmm.
And they clearly outperformed the other people in the so I mean, this, to me, the parallel for me was, here's another instance where very basic biological tenets, we all learned about sex in
Right.
grade school, are are now considered wobbly or unreliable, or there are other agendas that are taking priority over these basic biological precepts that we thought we knew. Um, so that was my piece, and nobody's really made that connection before, and but I wanted people to understand, like, what is, what they're seeing out there, that some of these ideas and some of these controversies or seemingly non-understandable ways in which we now see things, like, some of this is connected, or at least in my view it is.
Yeah. And not only that, I remember, and I do recommend people learn about Diana Rogers and the Sacred Cow documentary. And having done some of the research that Diana Rogers did, I remember watching that, and one of the things she shared is that the EPA, which should be reasonably a reliable source, talked about livestock, and about 3.9% of the emissions come from livestock. That's something to think about, right? And only 2% from beef cattle.
So I mean, it's tiny, and that was a report that came out during the Obama administration. So, you know that's typically Democrats have been in favor of reducing meat for the climate. Yeah, I also recommend Sacred Cow, the movie, but they're also good. She just has a bunch of infographics on that
Yeah,
website.
easy to
And
digest, and
yep.
there's so
And
much information that's misleading us. And
I think, I mean, whatever your views are on climate change, or whatever your impression about the contributing role of livestock, the point is to have a conversation around that issue that involves the human nutrition that livestock brings, right? The
right, right,
nutritional angle. Like, okay, maybe they drive climate change, livestock, but they're like an absolutely essential source of available protein for
yeah,
us, for
yeah,
humans. And that argument is not even at the table. I mean, I've been watching these international conferences, I've been following this whole subject for a very long time. And I will tell you, at the World Food Summit, at various conferences around the world on this topic, there is no human nutrition expert at the table.
mm,
So it's just not even considered. I mean, you cannot create good policies without looking at the costs and the benefits. So, maybe let's say benefit is help reduce climate change, but the costs are unfathomable if you think that reducing complete sources of protein contributes to human diseases, which I believe they do. So
mm,
you have a toll of chronic disease, which now afflicts 93% of all Americans. So you have to talk about the costs and the benefits, and especially in the context of the Olympics, where it's, how dare
mm,
they try to balance their carbon budget on the backs of these Olympic athletes?
right,
Really?
yeah,
I mean, it's one thing, the British athletes, they had enough money to go off and get their own food, but what about the athletes from Sierra Leone, or
mm-hmm,
what about, or Madagascar? I don't know, but I'm just saying,
right,
it's so unfair to these athletes who have devoted their entire lives to this,
mm-hmm,
to say, okay, we need to reduce our carbon budget, so this is how we're choosing to do it. And, sorry, we're completely ignoring human biology.
wow. Well, let me say this: a lot of people who follow your work and even this YouTube channel are just really not sure what to do in terms of where do you go? Do you trust the experts? Do you So one of the things, and what you'll find is that if you do a Google search and you're saying, well, how do I know, who do I trust? Is it the registered dietitian? Is it the National Institutes of Health? Is it the American Heart Association? The reality is a lot of these organizations are sponsored by industry, so that creates a little bit of a problem by itself. So when I talk to people, when I'm talking to patients, I just want to share that there are resources. I am going to share a link in the notes. The Metabolic Multiplier, that's a website that actually has a link to some of the things that you can trust from a low carb perspective. One would be the Nutrition Network. They educate us about nutrition quite well. The Society of Metabolic Health Practitioners, Verta Health, the Diet Doctor, Charlie Foundation for Ketogenic Therapy. So I'm going to share a link so you can, and then some of the clinicians who also do this work are also shared there. And there's a link for the person who's learning, and there's a link for a clinician. So I want to kind of wrap this conversation up with that, at least so that when you walk away from these topics that make you pause and maybe are controversial, you'll have a way to move forward in a way that serves you. So any final thoughts before we wrap up, Nina?
Yes, I would suggest like also follow the few journalists who are writing and responding to the headlines in the news, who are analyzing in my case, the politics and the financial conflicts of interest, who are trying to make sense. There are really very few of us doing
Right.
this. And so, if you want to follow my work and that of Gary Taubes, we're at Substack, and our column is called Unsettled Science.
Appropriately titled. So and again, for those who are just meeting you, Nina's doing some wonderful work and trying to create awareness. And you, even when you think about the elections that are, occurring soon, even when the person gets in office, you got to keep pushing them and keep educating them so that they can hopefully implement policies that serve all of us. So again, Nina, I appreciate you coming to this video, sharing your perspective. And for those who checked us out, hit that like, subscribe button. And if this intrigues you, share it with others who you know. So thank you again. And until the next video, continue to be safe, be well, and continue to protect your